thoughts, opinions, and general overall shade thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck and Rico Lamitte, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us. Yeah. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, December 20th, and today is Go Caroling Day. National Sangria Day, because you're probably going to need some of that after all that caroling. As well. Singing? Yeah, exactly. It's also Mud Day and International Solidarity Day. Unity. I guess. Solid ones, I thought, maybe. You know what I'm saying? But nonetheless, thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look down below on your screen to see where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those audiences. We're kind of having a little upside down day over here today. We are going to kick it off with Mr. Attorney at Law, Mr. Dale Schafer himself. That's right. He's the founder of Armada Law Practice and at one point in time did some time for a cannabis crime. That's right. It is Mr. Dale Schafer.
Good morning, everybody. Today's story comes out of Law 360. The headline is a group of former U.S. attorneys urges the Department of Justice not to reschedule pot. And as I read through this, and I know Luke appreciates this, one of the signatories to this was the guy that prosecuted me, and I think prosecuted Luke, out of the Eastern District here in California. And a couple of things that came to mind. One of them was Mark Twain saying there's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. And so this letter's got a bunch of statistics in it. Okay. I'm also remembered that I think it was 1971, the DEA came into existence. It was funded and staffed, and their job was to go out there and fight drugs. Okay. 1971. We're here in 2023. Drugs are cheaper, more potent, and more abundant than they were in 1971. So I don't know what metric the DEA has to measure success, but in my book, they're a miserable goddamn failure. Okay, so we got a whole bunch of these former U.S. attorneys, and they're going, oh, my hair's on fire, we can't allow this, the only people that win are the cartels. Give these people break from 280E, they're going to go out and market addiction to our children, all the fucking tropes that have been going on for so long. Okay? And I'm also reminded what Marcus Aurelius said, that the opinions of 10,000 men are worthless, so they don't know shit about the subject. And I'm telling you, U.S. attorneys don't know shit about addiction, okay, or substance abuse. They know how to prosecute people for it. Okay? And so I'm also reminded that in the early 1940s, Mayor LaGuardia told Harry Anslinger that there's no reason to be doing this shit with marijuana because we shouldn't even be involved with small-scale transactions. That ain't that big an issue. Mm-hmm. He got no more funding for his studies, and boom, he was, no longer an expert for anybody. Raymond Schafer, just after Nixon got the Controlled Substances Act passed, came out and said the same thing. I don't see what the big deal is here, okay? small-scale transactions, this stuff, find something else to worry about. Okay, Nixon shit himself. Also clear that heroin was put in Schedule 1 to go after blacks because they assumed blacks used heroin a lot. And marijuana or cannabis was put in Schedule 1 because they wanted to go after the hippies and the anti-war protesters. So now we're going forward into 2023, and these knuckle-dragging Neanderthals are citing things like cannabis has a 30% addiction rate. Horse shit. I don't know where that comes from. I looked up on the CDC's webpage, and they cite one study at 30, another at 10, and then this letter cites one out of Washington at 21%. Well, what is it? The problem is you don't know. And if you ask a cop what the addiction rate is for a drug, give us more money and we'll go out and fight it and we'll let you know. They're also calling for more studies. Okay? More studies of what? They've had a lock on studies of marijuana since 1970. They won't allow them, okay? Sue Sisley had to fight for years just to get weed so she could do a study on vets with PTSD to go, oh, it's helpful. Epidiolex and Sativex are on the market here in the United States. They aren't Schedule 1. There's been studies done to show the efficacy. But this letter they wrote, I mean, I think Heather posted it for you guys. You can take a look at this. This is propaganda. And the hair's on fire, okay? It's addictive. Oh, it's higher THC, therefore it's more addictive. What the criminal justice system needs to get out of this. I call them junkyard dogs. If I need protection, I want the junkyard dogs. If I need to figure out how to do something, I want them on a chain and call them in when we need protection. Okay, this is nonsense. This is exactly why we're going to continue to struggle to get cannabis rescheduled or get it out of the Controlled Substances Act altogether, because people like this who claim they know what they're talking about. Oh, I was a U.S. attorney. I did all this stuff. No, you're a cop, okay, or you're a prosecutor. You're not a doctor. They need to sit down and shut up. Okay, now. This gets me heated because I did 5 years in prison. Luke, you did a whole lot more than that because these Neanderthals thought we're going to teach somebody a lesson here and use these laws and just beat you up. And they're complaining that the tools are gone. The tools, those are guns they put to your head to get you to cop a plea to go to prison and ruin your whole life. We're going to make it even worse to you. And Blumenau or McClintock now says you can't spend money. So, we've got one hand tied behind our back. Okay, well, how do we stop you guys from going out there and fucking up people's lives, ruining lives all over the place, okay, without telling you, no, you can't do this. Somebody's got to tell you. When you tell them no, oh, my God, you're taking away our tools. Okay, I'll get off my soapbox here. But, Luke understands this too, that when they decide to target you, they ruin your lives. They don't give two shits about it. They haven't solved anything with drugs. And the reason the cartels keep winning is because we can't get uniform policy on cannabis. And so it's outlawed a lot of places and the black market goes up. The trap's here, we win. Okay, back at you. I'll shut up for a minute here, maybe.
Oh yeah, Dale, get him, Dale. But I will say this though, I kind of agree with these U.S. attorneys. I don't think that the U.S. should reclassify cannabis. They need to just straight deschedule it, and any type of classification is going to be damaging to the whole industry overall.
Rico, can we get that soundbite that says "I agree with U.S. attorneys" and go ahead and put that on the bottom tagline on Planet 9 News?
Yeah.
Listen,
I am agreeing.
Hold on.
These are former.
Agree with U.S. attorneys.
These are
Matter
former.
of fact, let me tell you why I don't agree with U.S. attorneys or former U.S. attorneys. And this is why.
Guerrara, shout out to Ann Milgram.
Yeah, for real. Hey, so number one, McGregor Scott, Mr. McGregor Scott, the U.S. attorney from basically the beginning of U.S. attorneyhood until Obama took office, and then they got him out of there. And then when Trump took office, he got back in there. And he is the one who prosecuted myself and Dale. We have a personal history with this. So I saw him at a Kings game once with his wife. I was with my daughter. I didn't know it was him. I turned around. I was on court side. He was in the row behind me. I handed him my camera. Back then you had cameras. I said, hey, can you take to his wife, I said, hey, can you take a picture of me and my daughter? While they were taking the picture, it dawned on me who it was. I didn't know. I was on ankle monitor at the time. Anyway, fast forward, Trump passes over my clemency. He doesn't deny me. The DOJ comes in and says, hey, we have a few dozen names on this list of this clemency list that have to come off. Mine happens to be one of them. They didn't like my stance on cannabis. They didn't like how vocal I was, yada, yada, yada. And I get pulled off the list. An article comes out in Forbes about it. They want to get commentary from the sitting U.S. attorney. Usually they say no comment, this is a case that's ongoing and, yada, yada, right? Well, Mr. McGregor-Scott went in to talk about how, because two presidents had passed me over, it was obvious that my conviction was valid and that if I deserved to get out, the president had let out tons of people who had done massive drug transactions and trafficking. And if they wanted to let me out, they could have, and they didn't. So that shows that his conviction was valid. It was completely like crazy logic. It didn't make any sense. It was contradictory. And then to wrap up the whole story, this is the bow on the present. Is McGregor-Scott retired, and guess what? McGregor-Scott went into private practice, and guess where McGregor-Scott works? At King & Spalding, the attorney firm that got me out of prison. Thank you, McGregor-Scott.
He was on both teams.
But no, he actually didn't. He wasn't on my team. He was like part of the firm that didn't want me to be in the firm. And I'm not going to get into that part of it. But anyhow,
he was saying a conflict of interest.
He ends up being on private practice at the firm that got me out of prison. So it was like a full circle moment. Shout out McGregor-Scott. We don't agree with you here, buddy. I'm going to have to say descheduling to no scheduling is the way it's going to go. No matter how hard you guys fight, the genie cannot get put back in the bottle. And the Japanese soldiers that are stuck on the island, the war is over.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, bars.
Man. No, man.
Bars.
Oh, man. Oh, man.
Scarmazzo bars.
Hold on, bro. He took a picture of you guys. Do you still have
me and
this
my
picture?
daughter. I do. I actually do. My daughter later, not knowing who took the picture, sent me a calendar in prison, and one of the pictures of one of the months was that picture.
Wow. Man, bro, this is...
What a guy he is.
Yeah.
Exceptional character.
Can we get him a hashtag when we post this episode?
Very possibly. Very, very, very
Hashtag
possibly.
we love McGregor-Scott.
Hashtag, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. We're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
How's it going, guys? Saman Razani coming to you from Green Street here with Jason Beck, smoking on the best weed in the world. Did you know that we have an audio-only version of our podcast available on Apple, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, and Spotify? Tune in now and check it out.
I go to jail for 20, 30 years under him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, now we got started off on the right note. Y'all know who it is up next. It's the author, activist, entrepreneur, OG, trailblazer, warrior for justice, spitter of all things truth. And you know what? He's also a dope girl dad. Y'all give it up for the man, our friendly neighborhood outlaw, Luke Scarmazzo.
Yeah. So check it out, man. Man, it's a wonderful Wednesday. You know we're coming to you live and direct from the Northern Kingdom, the king and queen in the north. And I'm bringing you that outlaw news that I love to cover because, man, it's just like, it's almost laughable sometimes. And this one is laughable.
One of those.
This is definitely one of those laughable ones. So my headline reads, St. Johns County ex-sheriff used marijuana in car. Here's why he wasn't arrested. So now we have, a whole article telling you why somebody wasn't arrested. That usually means they probably should have been, right? Well, we'll see. You be the judge. David Shore was pulled over for running a red light and given a warning after marijuana was confiscated. The former sheriff of St. Johns County was issued or was not issued a ticket or arrested after he was pulled over with 8 grams of marijuana in his vehicle Friday night, an incident report states. David Shore, who served as sheriff from 2004 to 2021, quite a tenure there, Mr. Sheriff, was pulled over at Pope Road and A1A Beechwood Boulevard. Dang, I didn't even know that was in there. Okay. Shout out Vanilla. About 9 p.m. after failing to stop at a red light before making a turn. The incident report from St. Augustine Beach Police Department states. During the traffic stop, officers observed pieces of marijuana on the vehicle's center console while collecting Shore's driver's information. The officer noted in the report that he had a very strong odor of marijuana coming from the car.
Must have been good weed.
Usually that means he was tacking it out, but I don't know. We'll find out maybe. Shore had a valid medical marijuana license at the time of the traffic stop. However, the substance was not in its original package and clearly had been used inside the vehicle, the report states. So he arrested people for years and then went and got a medical marijuana license.
Right.
And then I guess perhaps shops at the Trap or maybe a valid store that still sells in baggies. I don't know.
Florida, by the way. This is Florida.
The officer confiscated the marijuana to submit as evidence for destruction. David was given a verbal warning for both the traffic violation and having marijuana in the vehicle. Shore was subsequently released from the scene.
I wonder what would happen. I wonder what would happen if this person would not have been a police officer.
Maybe would have been black or brown.
Maybe.
I think this would have been a completely different outcome. I don't know.
The right to remain silent.
I feel like this.
You say can and will be used against you.
I feel like this cop just isn't that quick-witted, because if I was him, I would have instantly said, you know what, I seized this from some kid, I used officer discretion, and I didn't want to ruin his life, but I did seize the weed.
He hasn't been an officer since 2021, so that would have been a kind of a hard pull. But he may still been over to do like
3 years old.
Citizen's arrest or something. I don't know. The point is this to me, there's more to the article. It talks about why he wasn't arrested and all this BS, but it's obvious to anyone just reading this on face value that if it would have been anyone else driving in that car, or 90% of anyone else driving that car, they would have been in jail. They would have had to bail out. They would have had to call their job, probably got fired from their job, and all this other stuff that didn't happen to this guy who just got the pat on the back and, hey, Dave, you have a nice day, and I'll bring this marijuana back to your house after I get off later on today.
We'll smoke it together.
So
after we destroy it, right?
The double standard here is egregious and glaring, but it's part of the dual standard that we have in our justice system. The rich and predominantly white people in society, and I hate to play the race card like that, but I was in prison and Dale was in prison, and we see who the majority of people are around us. It's poor people, it's people of color, and what happens in these situations is they get broke off, and the people of privilege and people that have ex-sheriff titles to their name, they get let go. And that's just the way things go. And it's sad. It's a sad state of affairs. Hopefully it's something that we can correct. But justice, the arc of justice is slow, to quote another, I believe it was Mark Twain.
The arc of
or no, that was Einstein, actually. It was Einstein, excuse me. So, yeah, I mean, what do you guys think about this?
I mean, I think what's kind of funny is, like you were saying, if the circumstances were different, if the person getting pulled over was different, that 8 grams of marijuana that they confiscated would have been put on a table and said they had a street value of like $20,000 or some bullshit like that.
Yeah.
Right.
There's the flip side of this coin too, though, right? Because not all law enforcement feels that the laws around cannabis are rational or reasonable, right? And also, I can't speak for Florida, but I can speak for a number of acquaintances in law enforcement that I have in California. When they encounter people violating the open container law, so to speak, in California, if you're driving and you clearly have been smoking in the car, or your container's not in the back and out of, control and reach, they're not inclined to do much about it either, because it's more paperwork for them than anything. And a lot of times these cases just get thrown out. So it's what I'm trying to get to at the very end of this is not all law enforcement feels the same way that traditional law enforcement has about this plant. And it's always a weird element for us in the industry, I think, because there's this person who has been seen as the enemy for a very long time, right? The complete op. But now we're starting to see more law enforcement officers engaging with this plant. And we, the facilitators of this plant, want that, right? And so we have to be careful not to slap law enforcement officers too hard.
True.
When they're showing positive activity towards our mission.
That's a good point. That's a very good point, because I guess, I'm looking at this through a colored lens, and of course our experiences with mine and Dale's make us do that in certain occasions. And but she's right. Perhaps maybe the officer pulling it over was a supporter of cannabis and didn't think it was that big of a deal. I applaud officers that use their discretion in that sense and not clog up our system with BS nonviolent cannabis offenses or infractions or fines and burden people with money, because oftentimes that's people who are on the lower income bracket that can't afford those fines. But hey, we'll give them the benefit of the doubt here, and I think Manndie is right in the sense that there are officers that are coming around to this. I think that there are officers in certain localities that are being allowed to use cannabis, and as long as it's not on the job and stuff like that. So I think the tent is getting broader, and I think everyone is welcome in the tent of cannabis for sure. Like even when we were running our dispensary, the dispensaries back in the 215 era looked a lot different than they do now, obviously, to a lot of people. But the thing that was really special about them back then, it was a really eclectic group of people that used to come in. You would see firefighters and law enforcement officers and attorneys and city council members and skaters and surfers and everything. It was like every walk of life that you could see, and it was all congregated at the dispensary back in the 215 era. So to get back to that point, to get back to the point where cannabis is the uniter and the acceptor of everybody, I believe that is a good thing and a positive thing. However, I'm always going to remain skeptical because I know the culture of law enforcement. I know how they're trained. I know how they're taught. I've had conversations with many law enforcement officers in this regard about how they're trained and how they're taught to look at things and how they're taught to police. And I believe that pendulum is starting to swing back the other way. I believe it's starting to change. I believe that they're being held more accountable now, but I don't think it's enough. I think we need to continue to go further.
I think also
I actually represented cops back in the 90s and even in the 80s. And in those days, they knew that the laws about marijuana were bullshit, but they were tools they could use. You smelled weed, you had probable cause to search a car, search a house. They don't want to give that stuff up. And the term tools, I think, is a pejorative in this sense because they just beat people up. Okay. And when I was working inside there, they all knew that Molly smoked weed. But she was their favorite substance abuser, so she was never going to get stopped. I had a concealed weapons permit. No cop was going to do shit to me, never search my car. I was inside that privilege. I've seen it. And it was the policymakers, and still the policymakers, and that's why this DOJ, this former U.S. attorney statement is informative. The policymakers still want to beat the drum of let's go out and fight drugs. The cops who got to do it are like, this is horseshit. Why are we doing this? People smoke weed are not dangerous like drinking alcohol. What are we doing here? And I think that's what this story shows, that the beat cops are like, it's more paperwork than it really is worth. Okay. And that's a grand statement right there, because it used to be, paperwork. Now I've got PC to search your house, your life, your car, everything.
I think it's also going to be interesting to see what happens when we have this whole next generation of law enforcement, Gen Z or whatever the next generation is. Because, for example, the ex-sheriff that's in this story here, I think it's hard for us. It's hard for us to kind of wrap our head around that as people that have been around cannabis since it was not legal, since it was illicit market days. Because in the back of our mind, I just have a gut feeling that person has more than likely fucked somebody's life over possession, So now I think it's going to be a very different perspective that we could have for this new wave of law enforcement that potentially became a cop after a state had already become legal, and maybe they've never actually done that in their career. So it'll be interesting to see how that dynamic and that relationship between like the outlaw culture that still resides within cannabis interacts with this new wave and this new philosophy for law enforcement.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So, and it's also, to add to that, is not only is it the next generation coming up in states that have been completely legalized, but they're also coming up without the stigma, and they're also coming up in it without the propaganda that was hammered into our younger generation with the DARE programs and the Just Say No's and all those things. So they're coming up with a mentality of that surrounds cannabis that's completely different. So I think that's actually a really good point, that as these next generation of law enforcement officers come up in through the ranks, I believe we will see a shift in mentality and hopefully a shift in culture of the law enforcement community.
Yeah, and I think like to add to that, we also see, you know, what's happened in the past 3 years with George Floyd and a lot of these other very publicized instances of police abuse. I would hope that leads, you know, that we're leading to an area where there's more accountability and transparency, which I think will ideally, you know, in an ideal world, will attract a better set of individuals to become police officers than potentially happened 20, 30 years ago.
I don't know. I think that's all. I think that's all the dream world.
Yeah, I said hopefully.
You guys are all living in a dream world.
You know what? I think, like you said, so like the next generation of police officers, I do believe, you know, 10, 15 years from now, it's going to be all robots and run by AI, and they're going to be just. It's
going to be woke AI with ESG scores and everything.
You want to know why they have been stalling out on like a lot of the facial recognition software and everything? Because it's racist as fuck.
It's racist.
The system
facial recognition is racist.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's because it's written. That code is written by engineers that are predominantly white men. So like their biases are going to come through into their code.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
man.
I do think that it's going to be run by like robots and private police. So it will be interesting times indeed. And so I'm making as much money right now as possible. Get the fuck on my island.
Yes, right.
Not have to deal with these jokers.
We're gonna keep this.
Man.
We're gonna we gotta keep the train. We gotta keep the train going. We gotta keep the train going.
Did you just watch Demolition Man?
I watch Demolition Man once a month, bro.
Yeah, we're going to roll right on into Miss Manndie Tingler. She's a mom. She's an edibles judge for the Emerald Cup, and she is a cannabis executive who wants to show you how motherhood and an executive lifestyle all go hand in hand. Coming up next is none other than Miss Manndie Tingler.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Wednesday. You're almost to Christmas. I hope you finished your Christmas shopping. I haven't. So,
Me neither. I never do, though. I'm like a last minute person.
Oh my God, anyway. I hate the last minute. All right. Anyway, let's talk to you guys about the potential of Japan and their relationship with cannabis.
Marijuana, son.
Today, my headline reads, Japan remains an outlier as global acceptance of cannabis grows. Out of Tokyo, the first Saturday of December marked a black spot on the calendar. It was the first day of the country's new ban on products such as gummies, pre-rolled joints, and vape cartridges that contain, bear with me here as I sound this out, hexahydrocannabidiol hexyl, or HHCH. It's a synthetic cannabinoid that produces an effect similar to THC. For Japan, mostly young, growing community of cannabinoid users, the sudden HHCH ban amounted to a personal inconvenience, and for many businesses, it meant a major blow. At one of the local smoke shops, HHC products had been the top seller, purchased by a few dozen Japanese individuals or foreigners daily, the manager said. But in a time when much of the world is moving towards looser marijuana recreational drug policies, the new ban also served to highlight Japan's exceptionalism. HHCH and its numerous semi-synthetic cousins have gained popularity in the country precisely because the THC itself remains highly illegal. Following the HHC prohibition, the health ministry also hinted it might crack down even harder with comprehensive ban on similar THC alternatives. Products referred to as marijuana gummies are seen as dangerous, according to Tamiki Kizo, the country's recently appointed health minister. He also said, "We would like to caution the public not to consume them." He says they are a serious health and hygiene concern. Japan has had a long-standing relationship with the cannabis plant, as you all know, using it for centuries to make textiles and more. But now the country has some of the world's strictest laws ever in cannabis. It's almost as if they're moving completely against the world trend. Last year, Japan was estimated to generate more than 65 billion yen in alternative cannabinoid products without an umbrella law against synthetic THC products. However, the government has been left playing kind of whack-a-mole, banning certain THC-like compounds, including 3 others earlier this year. So you guys, the tagline of this story really ought to be Japan's moving completely against the world trend. But I'm really interested to see what you guys think. There are a lot of synthetic cannabinoids happening over there.
I'm not surprised.
Man.
I'm not surprised at all.
Yeah, I'm not surprised either. There was an issue a few years ago, a really famous, legendary Long Beach band. I'm not going to name them because I don't know how public it is, but they were on tour in Japan, and their lead singer was arrested with like an eighth and locked up for a week, and it was a huge deal. Eventually, they released him and deported him, and he could never go back to Japan. But I think that was right before COVID, so it must have been like late 2019. So this personally does not surprise me at all.
Yeah.
I mean, in all fairness, they're just talking about banning all of these hemp-derived compounds, aren't they?
No. Okay,
No.
let me give you some context on what they're talking about here. So this goes back to what I was telling you guys about this. They call it like synthetic marijuana, K2, spice. Yep. We had it in the head shops back here. It was coming from the East, China, Japan area. They were able to make these compounds. The feds were outlawing them.
Yep.
As soon as they were outlawed, they would just change the molecule at the end of the compound.
Yep, I remember all this.
It was like she said, it was a game of whack-a-mole where they couldn't catch up.
Yep.
It flooded into the prisons. The prisons, they hated it because they couldn't drug test for it, and it was nothing like weed.
Yeah.
It would zonk people out. It would they would smoke it and like literally just pass out and fall out. It was highly addictive. The dudes who used this stuff wouldn't even have a bar of soap in their locker, and they would come around asking for stuff just to be able to get high. I mean, it was like crack.
Yeah.
And nothing like cannabis. So that part of it, of them trying to like get a hold of that part, I get it. But the problem that I have is like, it always gets, because they market this as synthetic cannabis, it gets tied, all the ailments and all the scourges that this substance creates gets tied into cannabis. And then they start saying, oh, well, we have to move forward and ban all the cannabis gummies and ban all these other things because look what it does to people. And they're pointing at hexaterodactyl that they got coming out of there or some shit.
That HHC.
And alcoholism is crazy in Japan.
Right.
Yeah,
and also
real big alcohol problem. And you know what? They let weed come out there and do some good. And I guarantee you'll have a lot less alcoholics and a lot less problems like they have right now with the alcohol.
Yeah, you could buy used panties in a vending machine, but weed is definitely off limits.
I'm good.
I don't know that from experience. I've never been to Japan. I've never been to Japan. This is just stuff I've read about.
Hold on. What's hanging in the corner of your office?
No. Those were not from a vending machine.
I have a question. Since they're selling panties, do they sell them by like how many days they were used too?
Come on, different
SKUs? Jason, it sounds like you got to take a trip to Japan and let us know.
Give Jason the link.
Is there a market for you?
Jason
Tidy whiteys.
I bet. We're going to go to a commercial. We're going to be right back.
The Control Tower from Highly Educated has perfected the dab. Utilizing the concept of thin film evaporation, you can waste none of it and taste all of it. The micro texture of the SE pillar increases nucleation at elevated temperatures. And with the tower propelling at 2,600 RPMs, it's certainly the most efficient dab experience to date. The Control Tower from Highly Educated.
Nobody wants our draws.
Uh-huh. You with us, Rico?
Yeah, I mean, are you gonna give an intro?
Oh, I'm sorry. You know what? That's my total bad. Sorry. It's upside down day. We're switching the whole thing all up going on today. My bad. So coming up next, it is the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte. He's the Quasimodo caretaker, and today Quasimodo is rocking a lovely Happy Cabbage ball cap. That's right. It is none other than the dope dad himself, Mr. Rico Lamitte.
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for getting your shit together as you put together your profile to sell your underwear online.
I'm telling you, I've already been selling it.
Hey, ain't hating on that. Send me a link. I'm trying to get a cut. All right. Pause. Anyway, much like the established U.S. cannabis retail market, our Canadian neighbors to the north have been struggling. From trap shops, illegal operators, commoditization of flower prices, inability to properly market or advertise their products, pretty much everything that we've dealt with in America, Canada's been through and more. The reason why I say more is Ontario, Canada's largest province, does not have a delivery service system. They do legal delivery by mail order, a process their government's been handling for years now. Well, the program's recently come under fire and being called out as a monopoly by Ontario legal operators, and they say they want their cut. Per the article, Ontario's legal dispensaries are compelled to follow the province's guidelines on where, when, and how cannabis is sold, including only purchasing their stock from OCS, which, adjacent to their online sales portal, also operates Ontario's only wholesaler for legal cannabis. While the other provinces streamline their legal cannabis framework, retailers in Ontario say it's time for Canada's biggest legal pot market to follow suit. Growing numbers of licensed retailers want Queen's Park to do away with their self-serving monopoly and on mail-order cannabis sales, a business model only the government-run Ontario cannabis store is permitted to access. Genoway Cavian, I'm sorry, it's French, but I do not know how to pronounce that correctly. The executive director of Normal Canada and owner of licensed Kingston, Ontario retailer Calix Tricombe said they appreciate that in the beginning there needed to be options for everyone, but now we're at a point where there's a lot of retailers who need any sale that they can get. But this is directly taking food off of people's table to the tune of about $8 million a year. While Ontario prohibits retailers from mail-order cannabis sales, that isn't the case in provinces such as Alberta or BC, where licensed sellers can fill mail orders from within their own province via Canada Post, their version of USPS. Sam Gerge, owner of Toronto-based independent retailer Mary Jane's Cannabis, said that they should be able to ship Canada-wide before taking a shot at the system and saying that our country just loves having government monopolies and we cannot help ourselves. Well, you know what? I think it's really crazy the way that every other emerging industry gets a free pass and they can do whatever the hell they want and build up their shit regulation free until capitalism and greed gets out of hand. Then the government steps in to put them in check. Big oil, big tech, shit, big pharma, a shout out to the Stacklers, still eating off the death and addiction of millions. But why is it that cannabis is the only lane where we have to follow the government's lead? You usually have we usually have jokes for Canada and how they do things up there, but I stand with them 100% on this. This is absolutely trash. And as other people are struggling, the government should be opening up that access to the retailers. But that's just me, my opinion. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street for High 9 News. Love to hear from you guys. What do you guys think on this one?
Man, online weed sales.
Trudeau is getting his cut. Why can't the people?
Because
this is like one of the. This is Jason. I know you're going to support what I'm saying here because this is textbook overreach by the government and interfering in a free market. There's no reason why the Canadian government should be meddling like this in the market. Let the market work itself out. The market will dictate the prices. The market will dictate supply. The market will dictate demand. The market will work itself out. You don't have to mess with it. Stop coming in as the government thinking that you know better than we do in the industry. You don't. And then on a second note, Canadians, grow better weed. Grow better weed and it will sell. You won't have as many problems. Promise.
I mean, but if you don't even have a free country there in Canada.
Yes, they do.
No,
yes, they
stop.
do.
I wouldn't go that far.
I would.
Yes, they do. It's free-ish. You think
Free-ish,
America's a free country? You think America's really a free country?
It's freer. It's freer than Canada is.
Perspective is everything.
Canada is way more oppressive.
It's just a difference.
I mean, there's certain things that the Canadians are doing right. There's definitely things that they're doing right that they do better than us.
What does Canada do right?
Their justice system. Their justice system crushes ours, though.
Their justice system. Okay.
And they actually apologize for their past wrongs. Something that Americans never do.
Well,
and it just lingers. It just lingers on people, and it makes people just hate each other when they have nothing to do with the system that oppresses everybody. Right?
And I guess
our government passes that pain and that friction onto the people. And you know what? These white people across the street, they have nothing to do with my life, but I might get pissed off of them. They might get pissed off of me because of something they heard on TV because of propaganda being pushed out by the government.
There's plenty of that going on in Canada. Don't get it twisted. Plenty of that exact same thing going on in Canada.
Not open. And when I go out in Canada, when I go out in Canada in the street.
Oh, Canada.
Yeah, exactly.
People say hello to me everywhere. It doesn't matter what they look like.
And they are friendly.
I don't get that in America.
They are pretty friendly.
I get weird fucking looks from people who don't know me, who don't look like me. I get followed around stores and shit. That has not happened to me in Canada. My personal experience. So just saying, Jason.
Maybe you should go.
How's your experience been in Canada?
Maybe you should go and spend more time in Canada.
I spent a lot of time up there, man, and
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I don't have much issues.
I guess really depending on where you land on this issue too, the healthcare system, it's free.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Everybody buys their pharmaceuticals from Canada or Mexico.
That part's true. That part, yes. I agree. I agree with just about pretty much everything you've said so far this morning, Luke, on this story. I agree very much on that. But we're gonna keep this train moving because we're not gonna go down all these crazy tales. Rico wants
Jason
to drive
doesn't
us
want
down.
Jason does not want to get Canada props.
I softballed them right there.
Canada is so. Come on, bro. It's a commie country, bro. Stop it.
Canadian tuxedos.
Yeah, I bet.
Denim.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on, eh?
Yes. Let's roll. We're gonna roll right into Sohum, Rico.
Okay.
You ready?
Let's do that.
Let's do it.
Hold on. I was gonna introduce you, Jason.
See that? Look at that, bro. Look at that. We want people want to hear. I think from Sohum right now.
All right. So up next, you know what? He is the newest member to the High at 9 team, and he's repping the great state of Colorado. He's got more than a decade of regulated industry experience in data, operations, compliance, and technology. And you know what? He's currently on a project called Grind, a cannabis lifestyle brand for serious and professional athletes. I'd like to hear more about that. Coming to the stage now is Sohum Shaw.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And actually, Grind is a perfect segue to today's story, which is about cannabis for collegiate athletes. So, as it turns out, some researchers at a couple different universities did a study on the impact that cannabis legalization in a state has on those colleges' ability to recruit various athletes, and they focused on collegiate basketball and collegiate football. What they found was that colleges that are recruiting for basketball have seen a jump of an average of almost 4 slots on the recruiting rankings, while football teams have dropped almost 3 spots. So there's a couple caveats to this story. For one, this study was not conducted based off of survey data, so it's not considered conclusive. It is really just pointing out a couple hypotheses about the impact that legalization has on college athletic recruiting. But I think it reflects, one, the stances of both of those professional leagues. So the NBA, for example, this past year ratified a new collective bargaining agreement, which allows first of all, removes cannabis completely from the list of banned substances and what they're tested for. And it also created some guidelines to allow current NBA players to invest in and promote cannabis companies and brands, which is a huge step in the right direction. There's no other professional league or sport on the planet that allows that right now. The NFL, on the other hand, still does test for cannabis. Their collective bargaining agreement that was ratified, I believe, in 2020, increased the threshold for how much cannabis you could have in your system and not trigger a positive test. So they're also moving in the right direction. But, you know, these different impacts that we see on collegiate recruiting kind of seem to reflect each of those professional leagues' policies. Overall, it's just a step in the right direction. I would say we see a lot of different movement when it comes to cannabis in professional sports. The MLB a couple years ago announced a partnership with one of the largest and most well-known CBD brands on the planet. That's Charlotte's Web. That was a league-level deal. Additionally, a couple other teams have announced team-level partnerships as well. The UFC recently announced that they're going to stop. They've stopped testing completely, and they haven't stopped testing, but they've stopped punishing fighters for having a positive marijuana test. And now we even see the U.S. Anti-Doping Agency has been urging the World Anti-Doping Agency to amend their laws on cannabis after our legendary runner Sha'Carri Richardson was suspended from Olympic competition. So yeah, this is, I think, something that's super interesting. Grind being a brand that's targeted for cannabis athletes. You know, this is something that hits home to me. My partners in that are former collegiate football players and former NFL players. So seeing how this is impacting college recruiting is interesting. I think it's also going to be very interesting to see what happens with NIL and cannabis for collegiate athletes. And, you know, it's probably not going to be imminent, but I think at some point in the near future, once some of that stigma continues to dissipate, that we might see collegiate athletes being able to do NIL deals with cannabis brands. So, yeah, I'd love to hear what the rest of the team has to say.
First and foremost, LeBron James, if you want to represent profit, just tap in with me and I got you. No, for real though, like, and Rico, I know can relate to this. Like when we came up playing football and stuff, we watched so many like just superb and magnificent athletes get like gunned down for cannabis use. I remember Randy Moss getting kicked out of Florida State. I mean, Randy Moss. Getting kicked out of Florida State and the kid not being able to play football because he used cannabis. And this is one of the greatest receivers of all time. We would have missed out on that.
Man on the field, one of the greatest athletes, not even just a receiver, not even just a football player. He's a great, one of the greatest athletes.
Yeah. Freak of nature talent.
And Ricky sacrificed his professional career because he refused to be bullied around because of his stance and his use on cannabis. And he, again, was Heisman Trophy winner out of Texas, you know, one of the most prolific running backs in the league at the time, and had multiple failed drug tests and eventually took the suspension. I think he went to Europe for a little bit and eventually he just said, fuck it, and retired. He was like, I'm not going to be bullied anymore. And, you know, I've met him a couple times. He has his brand, the Heisman. I've seen him at a couple events. And the one thing I had to tell him was just thank you for taking a stand. And like, he put his commitment to the plant of cannabis over his love for the game of football, his desire to make money playing professional football, whatever else that he could have come from that endorsement deal. So, yeah, big props to Ricky on that.
Yeah, I echo that sentiment.
Yeah, like you were saying, man, like the list is endless of people who have been messed up, you know, and their careers have been derailed for this stuff.
Well, even but not even about professional athletes, but just average Americans, people that would have been like amazing inventors or people that would have been heroes in wars or whatnot, all sitting in jail because of cannabis and draconian laws, and we don't know what we have missed out on as a country or even as a culture by having these people locked up.
And you know I mean, you could take that argument even further and apply that to access to equal education and healthcare and stuff like that. I know, Jason, that might not be where you wanted to go at that point, but
I don't see how that conflates with that.
I know this is one study, and causation is not a correlation, and vice versa there. However, it will be interesting to see these numbers over the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years. And if we see the actual tide, you know, rolling over from Alabama because of their draconian weed laws,
I see what you did there.
Into states,
I see what you
into
did
states
there.
that actually do allow, do have legalized or decriminalized access.
Yeah, see what my Wildcats do this year.
Oh boy,
what's that? What you got on?
Let's see what my Wildcats do. University of Arizona, we're top 5 team. They legalized recently.
A little stronger. I never lost to Arizona Wildcats, but it's the same, man.
Hey, since we're all repping here, I'm gonna rep the bottom. Then I'm gonna go Cal Bears. What's up?
Let's go. A big shout out to my man.
You know what's funny is I had
Marshawn representing the greatest athlete of all time. My favorite.
Beast mode.
I had friends that I played high school football with that both went to both of those schools and then went on to the NFL afterwards.
Yeah, if I were a recruit right now, a big shout out to NIL program if they can actually get paid off of their name and likeness now. But if I was a recruit, if I was a 3, 4, 5-star recruit right now, like 100%. I do not know. I can say this now, 25, 26 years later. I say this now. I do not know any top tier athletes who aren't smoking in the off season, who aren't smoking in their downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, the NBA, I think it's Matt Barnes. There's a couple retired players that have thrown out some numbers. Anecdotal shoot from the hip guess is that something like 85% of active NBA players regularly consume cannabis during the season.
Yeah.
And the NFL is probably closer to like 40 or 50%.
Well, NBA has always had the easiest drug tests, you know what I'm saying, or lack of drug tests. And NFL's had
the whole damn league.
Yeah, and exactly. They already know what it is, and they've already came out about it and whatnot, and made some.
Right, and I mean the NFL too. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
When I had a panel back in this is 2017, and I had Big Al, Big Baby, Stack 5, Matt Barnes, and Baron Davis on for the first NBA panel ever, and they were talking about their experiences and how Steven Jackson was he was the dope man in the league. And Kenyon Martin was there, and he said his career.
Kmart.
Kmart said he thought his career was over, and he said he's like, you know what, fuck it. He had only played. He was averaging about 13 minutes that season, and had like 2 points going into halftime. He said, "Fuck it, I'm gonna hit this joint from Stack," and he said he hit the joint, and he scored 14 points in the second half.
Oh,
man. Closing it out in the rest of the season. He said he hadn't played like that in years. So big shout out to weed and the medicinal.
He smoked that focus strain,
helping the greatest become greater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, it's funny. Yeah, like I said, with Grind, we've gotten to interact with some of these guys, and hearing them laugh when you tell them, like average person you talk to about cannabis and sports, they're like, oh yeah, I could see cannabis, maybe some edibles or something, but smoking is bad, right? I'm like, you're tripping, because your favorite athletes are smoking a fat blunt before they go into practice and before they go into their game.
Yep.
Killing it.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well,
and cannabis, for real, cannabis and basketball, I think, have always really been tied in a lot. Football,
bro, they're all ballers. What do you mean?
But no, just the culture of smoking and then going onto the blacktop and hooping in the afternoon, is just something that was always a common thing, especially out on the West Coast where we have the better weather and can do that most year round. And football too. Football, and baseball get a little bit more technical, so you'll have less people, I think, smoking, because you have just different set of skills that are going involved. Not that they're better or worse, but it's just different. And I think you're going to see more people in those other leagues, as Sohum and Rico alluded to, that you're going to start to see a growth, and I think see more outspokenness, hopefully, because we can use the athletes using their platform, especially on the criminal justice side, but just generally speaking too, of just educating the public of what the benefits of this plant are, and how it's helping them recover versus pharmaceutical drugs. Because that's the biggest thing, right? Is we're saying to these athletes, hey, it's okay to take Vicodins and these opiate derivatives and become addicted on those, and have those things just messing up your body. And then you got to take other pills for the side effects, and pills on top of pills, right? And we're saying that's okay, but to use a natural herb to recover and heal your body afterwards isn't okay. And I'm glad that we're starting to move away from that and starting to see that these plant medicines that don't have all these side effects that the pharmaceutical has are actually better for recovery and you're not having the residual effects that all the pharmaceutical has on the athletic performance.
And and to your point about that culture too, I think you think about where these sports are popular and where these athletes are recruited from too. Like football, you got a lot of places in the South and the rural Midwest where these 5-star recruits are coming out of versus, you get a little bit more like suburban and urban recruiting when it comes to basketball. So that culture surrounding cannabis use in different parts of the country and the city versus the country is a little bit different as well,
Very true.
It's going to be real interesting to see the evolution of all this after we have our next Summer Olympic Games out here, because that's going to be here in LA, and it's going to be the first time that the Olympic Games have ever been held in a city with legalized sales of cannabis for anyone 21 and over. So I think that's going to be interesting, and you're definitely going to see a lot of athletes that probably would have won that ended up getting drug tests or whatnot, and because they're here and in town, they tried something and boom, all of a sudden they're losing their medals. Just watch.
Yeah, don't get me started on the Olympics thing, man.
Yeah.
Yep. But
if anybody knows Shikari, let me know. I'd love to go smoke a joint with her in LA.
Oh boy.
See if I can. You know what? We're going to go into the last one now, Jason.
Yep.
You know what, everybody?
I'm about to.
He usually gets us going at the top of the hour, but today he's closing us out. It is the Hyatt 9 head honcho, and I'm sure his delay today has nothing to do with someone's favorite ex-president being kicked off the ballots left and right.
It's the start of a banana
Jason
republic,
Beck,
you guys.
What you got today?
Don't worry, the Supreme Court will bring him back on. Don't worry. All right, here we go, guys. Here we go. State cannabis regulators still one step behind questionable THC lab data, you guys. That's right. Despite widespread acknowledgement from cannabis industry observers that commercial testing laboratories across the country routinely inflate THC potency results. Get out of here. Consequences are rare, according to a review of recent state regulatory actions. I'm not buying that, but okay. Critics say this demonstrates that the state regulators have been too slow to wrestle with the dubious THC potency results and other questionable data and behavior from state licensed medical marijuana labs, allowing the problem to grow worse. The pervasive lab fraud problem, in turn, deals a serious blow to the $34 billion marijuana industry's credibility for cannabis consumers, lawmakers, and law enforcement. In quotes, "It's truly a massive consumer fraud," said James McRae, a Washington-based data analyst who identified rampant cheating in that state's marijuana testing data as early as 2016. McRae's work led to increased scrutiny that culminated in Washington state regulators revoking one cannabis lab's license back in 2020. But that's among only a handful of examples of state regulators catching cheating labs in the act and meting out punishment. Meting out punishment, in quotes. There needs to be enforcement about this, and there needs to be consequences for being on the wrong side of it, McRae, owner of Seattle-based Straight Line Analytics, told MJ Biz Daily. State intervention, he said, it's crucial. So far, he added, it's also been sorely lacking. Complaints of lab shopping, a practice in which marijuana product manufacturers select private licensed labs for state mandated potency and safety testing, have dodged legal cannabis markets for years. In October, Yasha Khan, a vice president at MCR Labs, a state licensed marijuana laboratory in Massachusetts, obtained and analyzed anonymized data from testing labs in Maryland, Massachusetts, Michigan, and Oregon. His analysis found that labs routinely inflated THC levels by as much as 25% or more, they say. Khan also found signs that labs manipulated data to allow cannabis that should have failed for yeast or mold contamination to pass. Khan's analysis was only the latest warning from a credentiated scientific observer or a licensed laboratory that questionable testing results could be easily flagged using simple diagnostic tools. State regulations have at times taken serious action against labs alleging to have inflated THC results or manipulated data to allow tainted products to be sold. Prominent examples include Las Vegas, Canex, Nevada, aka Ludaset, and RSR Analytical Laboratories, which Nevada state regulators with a 10-year ban, punished with a 10-year ban for potency inflation valuations during 2019. Washington-based Praxis Laboratories, shut down in 2020 by the State Liquor and Cannabis Board, and Sacramento, California-based Sequoia Analytical Lab, which surrendered its business license in 2018 after a state inspection found the laboratory director faked results for nearly 4 months. Meanwhile, other allegedly suspected labs have managed to evade enforcement. A prominent example is Michigan-based Veridis Laboratories, which responded to a state cannabis regulatory agency recall with litigation that's still ongoing. More recently, states have launched or announced intentions to begin stepped-up enforcement, but results have been negligible. In mid-September, California cannabis regulators issued a long-anticipated warning to state-licensed marijuana businesses, and random tests of marijuana products pulled from retail shelves would soon begin. In the Department of Cannabis Control, the DCC wrote in a message sent to all licenses back on September 15th, if the results for THC percentage and contamination returned from a state laboratory didn't match the results certified by the commercial marijuana laboratories and printed on the label, the products could be recalled and the offering lab punished. Some cannabis laboratories welcome the DCC's move as long overdue attempt to wrestle with what's become known as a widespread and, in some views, a worsening problem: unreliable lab testing results, including labs bending the market pressures and boosting clients' THC potency to attract business. But after more than 3 months, California officials have not identified any products pulled from store shelves, nor has any punishment been met out to any labs as a result of the DCC investigation. In Oregon, random off-the-shelf testing won't begin until 2024, and that's in part because the Oregon legislature last summer approved the transfer of $2.2 million in marijuana license revenue to the State Department of Agriculture to pay for reviewing private lab testing results. In California, legislators are still ongoing, DCC spokesperson David Hafner told MJ Biz Bailey, and such probes are complicated in part because the initial results of these investigations have moved the department to widen its scope, Hafner added. California regulated adult use market opened back in 2018, but wasn't until 5 years later that the state's regulators imposed a standardized cannabinoid testing method for all labs to use. Meanwhile, Massachusetts regulators sent a bulletin last month to all state testing laboratories instructing them to report THC percentages via standardized formulation, and the Cannabis Control Commission continues to conduct routine inspections of all marijuana establishments, including independent testing laboratories, to ensure compliance on agency. To ensure compliance, an agency spokesperson told MJ Biz Daily via an email response to questions, and in quotes, a plan of correction is required if deficiencies are identified, the spokesperson added. Massachusetts cannabis testing landscape will continue to evolve as the regulated industry matures. To date, the agency has not reported penalizing marijuana laboratories or alleged or proven THC potency inflation. And in state regulators' defense, lab shopping and potency manipulation was simply not a widely foreseen problem in the early days of marijuana legalization. Why wouldn't you see that? And government regulators will rarely move with a speed of private or for-profit actors. And in quotes, the encouraging or positive way to look at this is that one of those classic cases of laboratories of democracy, said Jeff Rawson, founder of Massachusetts-based Institute of Cannabis Science and a critic of lax enforcement on questionable lab data. Different states try different regulations and see what works best, he added. From that perspective, I feel like the shortcomings can present different ideas. But above all, the states have to enforce their own rules, said Roger Brown, the president and co-founder of Florida-based ACS Laboratory, which claims to be the largest CBD hemp testing lab in the eastern United States and is licensed by the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. Well. What do you guys think about this? Lots of lab shopping going on. It's coming up to be Black Friday pretty soon, and I wonder if all these labs are going to be having a sale on THC percentages. But nonetheless, this is Jason Beck for the High at 9 News. What do y'all think about this?
Real quick here, Jason. A couple of things. Number one, Black Friday. already happened. Number two, it's very suspect how we haven't heard any of these lab shopping stories much this year at all, after hearing nothing but lab shopping stories last year. But number three, I like to give a big shout out to Veritas Labs. I know MJ Biz, whoever wrote this story, called them out as a quote unquote suspect lab. That Michigan's regulatory body is very suspect, and we covered that story.
Yeah,
we talked to them.
They're still hiding $40 million
bucks. Lab CEO and all that, and the entire board that was doing their regulation, they've all been quietly fired, and they sued the state because they did not find any wrongdoing, because they actually were receiving like a high test results, double test, triple test, and there was nothing wrong with their testing system. But their case was thrown out by the Michigan Supreme Court because they said that cannabis is federally illegal. Therefore, you cannot sue. Even though they lost upwards of $200 million with that recall that led to them. So I had to make sure that we said that about Veritas Labs. MJ Biz needs to check that, calling them out. They will get sued by Veritas Labs for calling them a suspect lab.
Suspects.
Yeah, I mean, lab testing has been a joke for years and years and years, and I mean, some states are slightly better, but when we were in Oklahoma, they didn't even have requirements for sample selection. It could be done by somebody in your grow. There's literally not a single rule about how you select a sample, what you send to the lab. And yeah, if you're a big operator and you're blasting samples all day and every day, like they're gonna do whatever they can within their guidelines of testing to give you the highest results possible. If there's a window of THC that they have, they're gonna give you the highest one. They're gonna do what they can to make sure your stuff passes, because if not, you'll just go to another lab. And like that's unfortunate, I think, inherent flaw that comes with for profit.
Yeah, wasn't the DEA supposed to be like giving quote unquote certifications to labs by the end of this year? Whatever happened to that?
No, that's for hemp. That's for hemp labs. That's not cannabis derived.
Listen. I got two things before we go. One is, it makes it really hard for fair play when somebody is using a legitimate lab because they really care about the product that they're putting out to their consumer, and they have to battle against these fake labs that are doing these inflated THC numbers and all that stuff. It makes it really difficult. I really think they need to figure that out, of how to weed out the bad actors. And two, it does nothing but continues to propagate the THC myth. Listen, let me tell the people this. THC percentage is not how you judge the quality of cannabis. Okay, I will show you something that is 25% and show you something that is 36%, and the 25% will crush it in every metric that you can measure. So it's smoking wise. I'm talking about not your lab metrics, your smoke, your smell, your taste, your feel, your effects, all those things, right? So we have to get away from thinking this whole THC percentage thing is even important, because although it's part of the metric, it is not how you should judge cannabis. And I think we're starting to see consumers get away from that. So hopefully they get this lab situation figured out. We have to even the playing field so that all of the lab results are legitimate and the consumer knows what they're getting, because that's important. It's important for us as an industry, for the consumer to know exactly what those lab results are, that they're accurate, they're getting what they're paying for, and just the THC percentage. Let's stop even talking about that as being a quality indicator.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think like it's what often gets overlooked with this discussion is like the long-term compounding impact of that being the nature of for-profit lab testing in cannabis. Is if you're a lab that's doing things the right way, your percentages that you're giving back on THC might be substantially lower overall, and you're going to start to lose customers.
Mm-hmm.
That can't be sustained over time, right? So those labs that are doing things legitimately are going to eventually lose their business and completely go out of business. So that needs to be addressed sooner rather than later.
So you're saying,
I think the one place our industry could use more regulation, they have less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Labs.
Exactly. I agree with that part. I do definitely agree with that part.
But you know what? Get your money.
Get your money. But I think a portion of the tax revenue needs to go into a public messaging campaign to let the general public know that THC percentage is not how you're supposed to purchase cannabis. And I think that would do a lot.
Right?
I think that right there would do a lot of it if we could change the behavior of the general customer to when they're coming in, they're asking for different terpene profiles or any other type of thing other than THC. And I think that would really stop the lab shopping in regards with the inflating the THC is really educating the general public. That'll kibosh it right there.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point.
Very easy messaging to get out too. Mm-hmm. So I don't.
Yeah, and I mean, like when I talk to people, I ask them, look, if you go to a liquor store, do you buy liquor based off of alcohol percentage?
Exactly.
No,
are you gonna
because all of it's around 40, or everyone's buying Everclear. Everclear would be the highest selling alcohol.
Are you gonna drop a blue face on a bottle of a fifth of Everclear?
Absolutely not. I mean, I haven't bought Everclear since I was exactly.
When you're young and you're trying everything out, like, oh man.
Yeah, when I was 18 and we were making jungle juice for a party up in Boulder, like, yeah, we bought some Everclear, but I don't think I've ever even thought about it after that.
Jungle juice, huh?
Because you forgot that night.
Yeah.
What's in jungle juice?
Anything like cranberry, orange juice, grenadine, like you name it. You just make a big jug of it and you put some Everclear and then you put enough juice in there where you can't really taste it.
It's stuff that I would say like 75 to 80% of the people who get into that Gatorade tub or whatever full of jungle juice, you're probably not going to remember shit that happened that night. It's blackout juice.
Man, oh man, I'm not even
good old days.
It's also very good if you go camping. It's a really good fire starter.
Yeah, man.
Yes,
I guess so.
There we go.
Well, you know what, everybody? Thank you for stopping in and joining us for another episode of High at 9 News. You can catch us live weekdays, 9 a.m. Pacific, high noon on the East Coast, all over the place today. Big shout out to superfans showing love, getting their comments posted live on the big screen, to our live audience and the online supporters, catching us across all media platforms, tuning in each day to the daily Headlines of Chaos, also known as the developing cannabis industry. To our vetted correspondent team tuning in from all over, bringing us much needed variety of perspective and your respected opinions to the table. To our production team, Cloud Media Partners, Big Adam in the background with his feathered hair and his sunglasses on, looking like a young John Travolta. As always, Cannabis Sativa L, the reason we show up to read these stories daily. Thank you too. It has been Wednesday, December 20th, 2023. The show is over. You've all been blessed with the top industry headlines. Hope it was enough for you to put in your pipe and smoke at least until tomorrow. I'm Rico Lamitte, the dopest dad on the street. I think everybody else is gone, but Sohum, you got us, man. You gotta leave these people with a little message.
Okay. I guess, this will be my last show until after Christmas. So I guess I wish everyone a happy holiday. Smoke some trees, buy your Christmas tree, and enjoy the rest of your week. Hopefully you're done now and everybody's on vacation,
Oh, yeah.
Love and peace.